Later that night, Lim Han bumped into Lola leaving the bathroom, still warm from the steam. Her subtle seduction pulled him in, and he grabbed her tightly, lowering his mouth toward hers.
Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and drop a comment below.
She pushed him away, breath unsteady. Lim only smirked from behind, telling her it was only a matter of time before she finally gave in. After he had left, Lola sat cross-legged on the floor, fingers flying over her laptop keys as lines of code streamed across the screen. Each command, each trace, each bypass, brought her closer to Tunde, but deeper into a web she didn't yet fully understand. And then she noticed her shadow. Or, more accurately, Naomi's shadow. Naomi Kim moved like liquid silk, silent and precise. She lingered at the edges of the living room, her gaze never leaving Lim, who sat in rigid perfection at the long dining table. Every now and then, Naomi's eyes flicked to Lola, and Lola felt the weight of her scrutiny like a physical strike. "Are you planning something, Jisoo?" Naomi asked softly, the words coated in sugar, but the venom cutting through the room. Her voice was calm, almost hypnotic, but Lola could sense the threat beneath the surface. What do you mean?" Lola replied, forcing her tone light, casual. But her pulse raced. Naomi was always watching. Always calculating. Always waiting for a slip. Naomi smiled faintly, a tilt of the head that made her look both innocent and deadly. "I just find it fascinating that someone so inexperienced could move around our world so freely. So confident." Her gaze sharpened. "And yet, there's so much you don't know." The confidence in her, Lola had to force herself to maintain it, even as her stomach twisted. "She knows something I don't. She knows more than Lim, more than I've calculated." Naomi left without another word, footsteps soft against the polished floor. But the tension lingered, thick enough to choke on. Later, in the privacy of her temporary room, Lola worked feverishly. She had learned to move like a ghost, to infiltrate servers without leaving footprints, but every keystroke now felt heavier. Behind a soundproof panel in the penthouse library, she discovered it, a hidden surveillance vault. Hundreds of monitors glowed in unison, showing every room, every corridor, every private moment she had lived. And then she saw it, recordings of her life before Seoul, every movement tracked, every interaction monitored. Not by Lim. Not by Naomi. By Rafael Moretti. The realization hit her like ice water. Her capture had not been random. It had been meticulously orchestrated. She had been watched for years, every step catalogued, every weakness noted. She had thought she was in control, she had never been in control. Her hands shook. "He's been watching me all this time, every step, every move," she whispered to the empty room. Her eyes darted to the screens again. She felt a shiver run down her spine as she realized the truth, she was bait. And Naomi knew it. That night, Lola confronted Lim quietly in the kitchen, where the soft hum of the refrigerator filled the silence. His sharp eyes scanned the room, measuring her like a predator. "Lim," Lola said softly, "did you know?" "Know what?" Lim replied, voice flat, but his jaw tightened. "That I'm being watched. That Rafael Moretti has tracked me for years." Her words trembled slightly. "And that." "Naomi," she hesitated. "She knows more than she lets on." Lim's silence stretched between them, cold and heavy. Finally, he spoke, each word deliberate. "You underestimate her. Naomi is patient. She knows how to strike when you least expect it. And she's dangerous, far more dangerous than Rafael wants you to believe." Lola's chest tightened. She realized the stakes were far higher than she'd imagined. Naomi wasn't just trying to displace her in Lim's life, she was trying to reshape the balance of power entirely. Every whisper to the family, every secret report, every subtle act of sabotage was part of a strategy far beyond Lola's comprehension. And yet, Lim's presence steadied her. He moved closer, almost imperceptibly, closing the space between them. "I will protect you," he said quietly. "Not a promise. Not a declaration, but a statement that carried weight, heavy with unspoken tension. Lola's heart skipped. She hated that she felt relief in his nearness, hated the flicker of warmth that seeped past her walls. This isn't safe. This isn't love. But she couldn't deny it. There was something magnetic about Lim's presence, a pull she couldn't resist even as danger pressed from all sides. Naomi's ambition, however, was relentless. She found the breadcrumbs that led to Lola's father, the bishop. Lola's stomach twisted at the revelation. Her father wasn't a simple man, as she'd believed. He was a ghost, a legendary hacker who had once dismantled half the Moretti empire. He had been hunted, chased, feared. And now, decades later, his return had put everyone in play, Lola included. When Naomi discovered this, she smiled a smile that chilled the bones. She didn't confront Lola directly. No. She used the information as a weapon, feeding Rafael misinformation, twisting facts, making Lola look like a threat to both sides. She positioned herself as the rightful queen, the one who could inherit the spoils of war. And the jealousy was electric. Naomi's subtle digs, her constant positioning by Lim, the way she never let him out of her sight, all of it fueled a fire in Lola she couldn't name. He's not mine, but he's so close. The thought made her pulse thrum with a mix of fear, rage, and something dangerously close to longing. A week later, Lola followed Naomi's movements through the penthouse corridors, silently monitoring her like a shadow watching another shadow. The corridors smelled faintly of jasmine, the perfume Naomi always wore, and Lola's stomach knotted. Naomi paused by the balcony, phone pressed to her ear, whispering to someone Lola couldn't hear. She laughed softly. That laugh, it's the sound of a storm gathering, Lola thought. She had to act. She had to anticipate Naomi, predict her moves. Every day that Naomi walked freely through Lim's home, plotting and manipulating, Lola's brother's life hung in the balance. Every day, Rafael's becomes bigger, watching from unknown corners. Every day, the stakes grew higher, and the lines between ally and enemy blurred. Lim found her later that night, leaning against the doorframe of her room. His expression unreadable. "You're obsessing over her," he said flatly. "I'm trying to save my brother." Lola snapped. Then, softer, "And I can't do it alone." Lim's dark eyes softened briefly. "You won't have to." He stepped closer, dangerously close. The warmth of his body made her heart race, the proximity a heady mix of safety and something else, something Lola had never expected to feel for the man who had abducted her, yet now was risking everything for her. A spark of jealousy ignited in her chest, Naomi's chest. For the first time, Lola realized that the shadow games, the surveillance, the silent wars in corridors, were not just about strategy, they were about survival, trust, and power. And perhaps, in a twisted corner of fate, about desire too. As she returned to her laptop, her fingers flew over the keys. The screens of the penthouse reflected in her eyes. Every trace she uncovered, every code cracked, every secret unveiled brought her closer to Tunde, and closer to the dangerous, tangled web of emotion she couldn't yet control. And Lola knew, deep in her chest, that the war between Naomi and her wasn't just for power anymore, it was personal. "Lim would betray you," Naomi's words rang in Lola's head. 2 weeks after the explosion in the Han mansion when Naomi almost killed Lim and Lola, Korea's night had turned into a symphony of sirens, gunfire, and whispered betrayal. The city felt like a living organism, one that could smell blood, hunger, and fear. Lim didn't betray Lola, it was Naomi who betrayed her. Lola crouched on the roof of an abandoned warehouse, the wind whipping her hair into her face as she scanned the streets below. Beside her, Lim moved with silent precision, eyes flicking toward every shadow, every potential threat. "They've spread out," Lola whispered, her fingers hovering over a tablet that displayed real-time feeds from hacked cameras. "Rafael's men are moving Tunde. And the bishop," she swallowed hard. "He's still in the facility. High security. Minimal surveillance outside the perimeter." Lim's jaw tightened. "We'll get them. But we have to move fast. Rafael doesn't make mistakes twice." His voice was calm, but Lola caught the underlying tension, the unspoken fear that every second mattered. She glanced at him, heart hammering. He was close, too close, as if the line between ally and danger had blurred. The memory of Naomi's gaze, the way she had tried to insinuate herself between them, flared in her chest. A pang of jealousy she couldn't control shot through her. She looked away quickly. Not now. Focus. Meanwhile, Rafael Moretti moved unseen beneath the city, a ghost in the shadows. He had captured both Tunde and the bishop and hidden them in a sprawling underground compound on the outskirts of Seoul, a labyrinth of steel, cameras, and armed guards. His plan was meticulous: break Lola, exploit the bishop, and consolidate control over the syndicate underworld. Naomi, humiliated by Lim's rejection and Lola's growing presence, had launched her own campaign. She manipulated government officials, forged intelligence reports, and planted false leads to make Rafael believe Lola and Lim were plotting to ambush him. Every whisper, every carefully crafted lie, was designed to destabilize the enemy while positioning herself as the savior of both syndicates. But her plan was reckless. And Lola had been watching. Hours later, Lola and Lim slipped through the shadows of Seoul like phantoms. The air was heavy with rain, the streets slick and gleaming under the city lights. Lola tapped her tablet furiously, decoding Naomi's forged files, matching them with the bishop's old encryption signatures. Slowly, a map of Rafael's facility emerged, revealing security weaknesses and blind spots. Lim's presence beside her was steady, a constant heartbeat of control amid chaos. Yet, she felt a dangerous closeness. His shoulder brushed hers as they ducked into an alley, his hand brushing against hers as he helped her over a low fence. "You're too reckless," Lim murmured, but his lips curved slightly, a hint of a smile, the first Lola had seen in weeks. "I'm saving my brother," she shot back, heart thundering. "And I won't apologize for it." He didn't respond, but she could feel the weight of his gaze as they moved, his eyes dark, unreadable, and yet somehow focused entirely on her. The facility loomed ahead, a monolithic fortress of steel and concrete. Cameras rotated lazily, guards patrolled in rigid formations, and the distant hum of power lines filled the air. Lola's fingers danced over the tablet, unlocking doors, overriding security protocols, and feeding false readings to Rafael's internal monitors. Lim's voice was quiet but firm. "Stay close. One misstep and it's over." She nodded, though every instinct screamed at her that they were already outnumbered, outgunned, and outmatched. Yet, for the first time, she didn't feel helpless. Together, they were dangerous. Together, they could bend this world, if only slightly, to their will. Inside the compound, the metallic smell of blood and oil made Lola's stomach churn. She led them through the corridors, heart pounding as the sound of distant guards echoed off the walls. The facility was a maze of steel cages, surveillance panels, and fortified rooms. Every step forward felt like walking on the edge of a knife. And then she saw him, Tunde. He was weak, slumped in a chair, eyes wide with fear. Yet, when he saw her, a faint flicker of hope sparked across his face. "Lola," he whispered, voice trembling. I didn't think you'd come." "I'm not leaving without you," she replied firmly, pulling him close. Relief washed over her as she saw he was unharmed, though exhausted. Her hands brushed his, lingering for a fraction longer than necessary, a silent promise that she was his anchor, his lifeline. Lim moved ahead, his senses on high alert. In a dimly lit corridor, he found the bishop, lean but sharp-eyed, scanning a security panel with rapid precision. "Father!" Lola exclaimed, rushing to him. The bishop turned, eyes narrowing at her. You shouldn't have come," he said, but his voice held pride beneath the warning. "I had no choice," Lola replied. "We don't have time to argue." Upstairs, Rafael finally discovered Naomi's betrayal. She had painted herself as his loyal confidant, the one who could manipulate both sides. But the truth had surfaced. Her lies, her manipulations, and her half-truths had cost him men, resources, and control. Rafael's presence filled the room, silent yet suffocating. "Naomi," he said, voice low, dangerous, controlled. You lied. You betrayed me. Naomi's usual composure cracked for a fraction of a second, her sharp beauty twisting into panic. I only wanted to stabilize the situation. Lola, she's too dangerous. I had to control it. You controlled nothing, Rafael said, stepping closer, his finger pressing the trigger. And now you will pay. The shot was swift. Naomi crumpled, eyes wide, her ambitions extinguished on the cold concrete floor before she could complete her final, deadly plan. Back in the corridors, Lola and Lim heard the distant chaos, shouts, gunfire, and the pounding of soldiers converging on their location. Lim pressed his hand against her back, guiding her through a service tunnel. Their proximity sent heat crawling across Lola's skin, her pulse quickening as she stole a glance at him. Stay close, Lim whispered, voice rougher now, almost intimate. I can't lose you here. She swallowed hard, feeling the dangerous tension between them stretch taut. He's not just my protector, she thought, heart racing. He's become the only one who makes me feel alive in this chaos. The bishop analyzed the compound's structural weaknesses with ruthless efficiency. Here, he said, pointing to a reinforced column, if we trigger this support, the entire wing will collapse. It's the perfect diversion. Lola's hands trembled slightly as she typed in the override, watching the lights on the security panel flicker. Explosions reverberated through the facility, sending plumes of smoke and fire down the steel corridors. Guards screamed as sections collapsed, and chaos erupted like a storm contained for too long. Lim grabbed Lola's hand, pulling her through a narrow tunnel just as the first metal beams fell behind them. She stumbled, heart in her throat, until his grip tightened. I've got you, he said, his voice low and unyielding. For a fleeting moment, all the danger, the betrayal, and the fear melted away. She looked at him, the firelight from behind painting his sharp features in gold and red. This man, he could destroy me with a glance, yet he's saving me. Outside, emergency sirens pierced the night as the facility collapsed behind them. Rafael fled into darkness, armored vehicle kicking up sparks on wet asphalt. Alive, furious, humiliated, but for now powerless. Lola, Lim, Tunde, and the bishop reached the safe house, hidden and guarded by loyal allies of the bishop. Lola sank against the wall, exhaustion and relief colliding in waves. Tunde rested beside her, bruised but alive. Lim stood near the doorway, dark eyes scanning the horizon. He finally allowed himself a small exhale. We made it. Lola glanced at him, pulse still racing from fear and something else, something she could not name. The tension between them hung like smoke. We actually did it, she said, voice trembling slightly. He stepped closer, shadow merging with hers. Yes, he said, voice low, almost a growl. But this isn't over. She looked into his eyes, something unspoken passing between them, a promise, a warning, a tension that bordered on desire. For the first time in months, she realized that survival had a price, and that price might just be the dangerous pull of Lim's presence. Rain pelted the roof outside, masking the distant sirens and the low hum of police helicopters circling the city. Inside, Lola sank onto a worn leather chair, letting exhaustion take her body, while her mind refused to rest. Tunde sat across from her, finally allowed to drink water after days of captivity, his eyes wide but alive. Lola, he whispered, voice raspy. I don't know how you found me. I thought I'd never see you again. She swallowed back tears and forced a smile. You're alive. That's what matters. I promised, remember? I'll never leave you. She reached across the small table, and he gripped her hand, holding on as if she were the only tether to reality in a world gone mad. From the doorway, Lim observed silently. His presence was steady, imposing, and yet, somehow, gentle. His sharp suit was rumpled from the escape, a faint cut on his cheek, and the glint of a bruise on his jaw. He had been through the same terror she had, yet the calm in his gaze never faltered. You did well, he said softly, walking closer. The words weren't loud, but they carried weight. Both of you. Lola's pulse throbbed, not from fear, but from the proximity of him, Their earlier closeness in the tunnels, the brush of hands, the shared danger, it had left something unspoken between them, a tension neither dared name. Lim's eyes locked with hers, dark and intense. "And you almost lost yourself in this chaos. But you didn't. That's why you're still here." Her chest tightened. She wanted to tell him everything, how terrified she had been, how powerless she had felt, but the words lodged in her throat. Instead, she simply nodded, letting her gaze linger a moment too long. "He's dangerous. He's powerful. He's everything I can't ignore." Outside, the city continued to burn in metaphorical flames. Rafael Moretti had vanished into the night, humiliated, wounded, yet alive. He would regroup, lick his losses, and perhaps one day return to reclaim what he believed was his. But for now, the world belonged to Lola, Lim, and the bishop. Inside the safe house, the bishop leaned over a digital map on a small table. "Rafael won't be able to track us here," he said. His hands shook slightly from his days of captivity, but his mind was as sharp as ever. "I've dismantled every network that could lead him to Seoul, or to us. If he wants a fight, he'll have to start from scratch." Tunde leaned closer, voice low. "And Naomi?" "She won't be a problem anymore," Lim said, a shadow passing over his face at the mention of her name. Her lies ended with her last breath. "She underestimated all of us." Lola felt a strange mix of relief and residual anger. Naomi had been the one who almost turned Rafael against them, the one who had whispered poison into the right ears at the right time. Yet, in the end, it had been her own ambition that destroyed her. The room grew quiet for a long moment, save for the bishop's soft muttering as he checked devices and encrypted channels. Lola found herself alone with Lim for a moment, the air thick between them. "You never said thank you," he said suddenly, his voice low, almost teasing, but edged with something deeper. She hesitated. "I can't. Not yet. We've been through too much." He stepped closer, closing the gap between them until she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "You don't need to," he murmured. "I know why you do it. I know why you fight." And his eyes softened, a rare vulnerability flashing in the storm of his usual coldness. "I'm not letting anything happen to you. Ever again." Her heart hammered. She wanted to say something, anything, but fear, exhaustion, and a creeping awareness of her feelings held her tongue. Instead, she simply let her gaze meet his, letting the tension speak for them both. It was a dangerous, intoxicating closeness. And then Lim did something unexpected. He reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. The gesture was tender, intimate, almost daring. Lola's breath hitched. "Lim," she whispered. "I'll always be here," he said, voice barely audible, just enough to be heard over the pounding of her heart. By dawn, the city's chaos had begun to settle. Lim made the decisive move, severing ties with the Han family and consolidating control over the syndicate. Within hours, the remnants of Han loyalty had either fallen in line or vanished, leaving Lim as the unchallenged ruler. Lola stood beside him, no longer a pawn, no longer Jisoo Han, but herself, Lola Ogunlai, survivor, strategist, and protector of her family. The bishop, seated across from them, allowed himself a small smile. "It's finally over. For now." His eyes glittered with satisfaction as he dismantled the last of the Moretti and Han digital networks. "Rafael won't find us here. He won't touch our family again. Not unless he rebuilds entirely, and he's too wounded for that." Tunde leaned against Lola, exhausted, but alive. "I can't believe this is over," he murmured. You saved us all." She ran a hand through his hair. "No one saves anyone alone," she said softly. Her gaze shifted to Lim, who was now standing in the corner, watching the city awaken from its nightmare. Later, in the quiet of the safe house, the tension between Lola and Lim surfaced once more. They had survived bullets, fire, betrayal, and betrayal again. The adrenaline that had kept them alive now turned inward, a magnetic pull neither could resist. Lim finally spoke, voice low and controlled. You were reckless back there, he said, not as a rebuke, but as a fact. And you followed me anyway, Lola countered, eyes flashing, heart racing. You risked everything. He stepped closer, shadow merging with hers, and she could smell the faint cologne, feel the heat of his body. I didn't follow, he said, voice almost a growl. I protected. I chose to protect. And I'll choose that every time, with you. Her chest tightened. And if I wanted more? Lim's dark eyes softened, the cold edge melting just enough. Then you'll have it. But only if you want it. Not out of fear. Not out of obligation. Only desire. Her breath hitched. For the first time in weeks, she felt something beyond survival, beyond revenge or strategy. She felt the dangerous, dizzying pull of trust, and something more. As night fell, the safe house quiet, Lola finally allowed herself to exhale. Her family was whole. Her enemies had destroyed themselves. Rafael was gone, alive, but powerless. Naomi's schemes were nothing but a memory. She turned to Lim, standing tall in the doorway, eyes fixed on her. We actually did it, she whispered. Yes, he replied, voice low and filled with an intensity that made her pulse race. And this is just the beginning. They stood there, in silence, the weight of what they had survived pressing in around them. And for the first time, Lola realized, she wasn't just a survivor. She was a queen. Not of an empire built on fear, but of a peace forged through blood, brilliance, and the unbreakable bonds of family. Lim stepped closer, closing the space between them once more. I chose you, he said, voice a whisper meant only for her. Above everything. Her heart swelled, the tension between them finally finding release in that quiet, heavy moment. Lola smiled faintly, a spark of defiance and hope lighting her eyes. And I choose us. Outside, Soul slept uneasy, but inside the safe house, a new throne had been claimed, and a new queen had risen. Lola Ogunlai, once a shadow behind screens, now stood at the center of a world she had rewritten, a woman who had not only survived but conquered. The war was over. But their reign, and their bond, had only just begun. Thank you for watching, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on my next video.